Are we live? Let's see. I usually do a countdown, but this thing is taking forever. Finally. Okay, it's finally live. However, is the algorithm kicking in? Sorry guys, I always ramble on in the very beginning here because I never know how fast this is going to take. It took a little bit faster tonight, so that's good. And people are starting to jump on. Hi everyone, Queens, New York. Love it. Love my New York folk. Hi from Michigan. Tony's amazing. She said it said some nice comments. I appreciate it. Let's see. Good. We're jumping on now. People are jumping on. We have a lot to cover tonight. So welcome to the show. Dr. Jason Dean, Revolution Network, your source for knowledge, health, and freedom on a Monday night where there's so much stuff going on. So some people said you weren't live for 2 days. Well, Saturday, my live Saturday was kind of the discussion with Dr. Mike Reed. I hope you enjoyed it. And then, let's see. Yeah, Sunday night, last night, I just decided to rest a little bit. And then I saw that gentleman's video. And I thought that was a perfect substitute for me because sometimes you just need to get rest. So I figured Sunday is a day of rest. Let me do that. And we'll be back on Monday. And it did not disappoint. There's so much information. We're going to go through it all. Before we start, on advice of a friend, I bought the book. It said it wasn't going to be here till tomorrow, but it got here in less than 24 hours. So I started reading this, and apparently we look kind of alike. I don't think so. He's got a lot more hair on the top of his head than I do. The beard, I guess, works. This book, I am about a chapter and a half in, and it is actually really tremendous. So it's just a really good book, and quite honestly, unless they are pulling off the greatest sales job ever to pull the wool over our heads and screw us, the Trump family seems very legitimately genuine and caring about how this country works. And again, it could all be a farce, but it doesn't appear to be. And at the same time, I always tell people, always keep your guard up. So no matter how much I talk about how much I love the president or how much I love the Q movement or the Anons or the book or whatever it is, I always have my guard up on the side, okay? I'm not just buying into everything. So I posted last night, I think it was, why I follow the Q movement. There's a couple people out there who, I wouldn't call them friends. They're people I know. I've connected with them. I've interviewed some of them who are very, very much harsh in the fact that they're saying it's all a joke, it's all a psyop, controlled opposition, etc. And as I said last night in the post, you can think that way all you want, but that literally, to me, that is a very negative frequency that you're in. And if you're going to constantly berate the movement, berate the, oh, this is just New World Order, then I actually start questioning what you actually want. Because if you're giving so much energy to that, then I think you're actually part of the problem. I have been in the negative world of this stuff for 10 years, thinking it was coming, and knowing that this New World Order could be a possibility. And as soon as I stumbled on this new information, I flipped like this because it's such a positive thing. And I think people out there, and I've been told by many of you out there in posts and messages, etc., that they appreciate the positive movement. I can't imagine why you wouldn't go with the positive movement, to the extent that I've actually not watched, and this is very hard for me because I do love him, but I have not watched the last couple David Icke videos because I know he doesn't love the president. I think he thinks that it's going to be a big psychological operation. I have not watched any Alex Jones because I'm just not going there. Trust me, when you put this much energy into something, any little negativity that you pick up on or read, it can actually punch you in the face. And so I'm trying to stay way off of that. Way off of that. So let's dive in. First off, something very fascinating tonight is, as the presser was going on, I have not watched the press conference tonight because I was on the way home. I go to Twitter and get kind of some of the summaries if I don't see the whole thing. And I will tell you something very interesting. I saw him the very first press conference when everything went down. The night I think I did the first video, there's this gentleman standing in the back to the left. If you're looking at president. To the left, I believe he's part of the Navy, or I think he's a sailor. Older gentleman, white hair, stays very quiet. He spoke tonight. I believe someone asked him a question. I don't know how it was set up. And they asked him what his specialty was. He actually said he was a physician, and he is an ICU doctor who specializes in ventilators and pediatric cases, meaning he only works with children, which I thought was very fascinating. Why, if COVID-19/coronavirus only impacts mostly older people, it has not impacted young people at all, why do we have a physician who's been overlooking or been on this board, this coronavirus board, whatever they call it, task force? He's a doctor in an ICU who specializes in the pediatric cases. I find that very fascinating. He works with ventilating systems, so he works in the respiratory area, and he works specifically with pediatric cases all the time. So, why is that happening, and why is he on the task force versus some random other doctor who might specialize in just adult or geriatric cases? Just keep an eye on that, because it goes along with some of the things that we've been listening to. And again, I'm skeptical on the children still, because I haven't seen anything, but I find it's fascinating that lines up with the story. Also in the presser, I don't remember the news network she was with, but a female asked if there was any other operations or any other military things going on other than what we were talking about during the press conference. And the president said, yes, human trafficking. So why did he decide? And the president seemed much more chipper tonight, just kind of almost like he was having fun, playing a little bit. And he said human trafficking, specifically women, are impacted the most. And then his quotes were, it's a horrible thing and we're hitting it hard. So he's fully admitting now that along with this, they're going after human traffickers, which I found fascinating that he was even willing to admit it, because he's been staying away from that stuff most of the time. On top of that, if you saw my post from last night, he also last night talked about vaccines and the fact that they wanted to make sure they weren't injuring people or giving them major problems. You can go and look at that video as well. So very fascinating that he's fully admitting that they're going after human trafficking. And I will tell you, he is the president. If you look at the stats over all the presidents in the recent years and decades, President Trump is the one who has taken down the most human traffickers in any presidency. And so a lot of people out there, again, are beating him up, horrible, he's doing terrible, yet he's taken down the most human traffickers of any president. So actions speak louder than words. Who's getting something done versus presidents in the past who talk a big game and they get nothing actually done. So moving on, the other thing that's going on is I was driving home, we stopped to get some gas, and gas in Florida right now, at least in our area, and our area is a little higher, a little more expensive than a lot of areas, was $1.87 a gallon. Now, the president admitted he was talking to President Putin of Russia, and they were dealing, also with Saudi Arabia, they were dealing with the OPEC issue. And the president even said, I believe it was tonight or last night, that the OPEC is a cartel and essentially it's a scam, and he was trashing OPEC. OPEC is an international organization that basically monitors and controls oil prices, mostly out of the Middle East. And now keep in mind, that is connected to the Federal Reserve note, or the quote-unquote dollar, not really the dollar. But I think the last time I checked, oil was at $28 a barrel. And I think Putin and Trump are actually trying to take it down to close to $10 a barrel to take down the petrodollar. Now, the president talked about, I think it was, again, I didn't see the presser tonight. I didn't see all of it last night. I caught glimpses of it. So I don't know some of which was tonight versus last night. But the president talked about going from $1.87, even talking about going down to 87 cents a gallon for gas. If that's the case, oil will plunge down to about $10 a barrel, which is insane. But at the same time, the president said he knows that OPEC and the oil producer organization is a cartel and a scam. So he's onto it. Now, the other thing, keep in mind, is we are now an exporter of oil in the U.S., which was never the case before. We were always getting it from the Middle East. We are no longer dependent upon Middle Eastern oil. And this is the other thing to think about oil. I'm not going to go into this deep tonight because this is a whole other thing you can talk about. We've always been told that oil is basically fossils, like the decaying of fossils underneath the ground. And it comes in pockets. Now, there is actually a large argument that oil is actually abiotic, which means it never runs out and it continues to be produced. Now, I'm not making an argument for whether oil and emissions are bad for the environment. Obviously, it's caused major problems. I'm not making that argument. I'm just saying that OPEC is a cartel that might be actually playing with supplies, playing with how much we can have, versus if it was abiotic, there's no end to the source. You could actually have a very low price on oil and gasoline, which would change the whole world. What I would love to see is going back to being our oil independent country, and then on top of that, slowly transitioning over to renewable resources. So, for example, solar, hemp, so water. You can actually run hydrogen engines, which has been done, where your byproduct is actually just water, purified water. I would love to see those take over, and electricity, etc. I would love to see long-term we actually go away from the oil, and also for plastic, instead of having plastic, we can actually have hemp plastic. And they've actually produced this before, to where the actual plastic made by hemp will break down and go back into the earth, the soil. So it can be done. The problem is the cabal, the cartel, has not allowed that because they want you to be stuck on oil, which is also, oil is the source of the pharmaceutical industry. So many industries are tied to oil. If you actually stop oil overnight, you would shut down the entire global economy. So a lot of people are going, we need to get off oil, we need to get off oil, we need to get off oil. Well, first, you have to build an infrastructure that is ready for renewable resources. We're not there yet. And second of all, you couldn't just do it overnight because essentially so many people would lose jobs. It would be amazing. We don't have the infrastructure involved. We have to actually build that. Keep in mind, we have been suppressed by the cabal for thousands of years, right? And so the last 100 or so, they pushed the oil thing on us, which is not ethical, not viable, and long-term is more toxic to us. So I would like to see that over a period of time. Now, on top of that, I'm going to go a little bit into Venezuela in 1 second, but the interesting thing is that we're obviously trying to deal with Venezuela and the drug cartel. However, Venezuela is also one of the most oil-rich nations on the face of the planet. Before socialism kicked in with Maduro, Venezuela was a very wealthy nation. So my associate, who's from Venezuela, her family, who had to escape Venezuela to here, they were actually a wealthier family. Like, they weren't super rich, but they did very, very, very well. And then when all the crap hit the fan, they had to get out because basically they were losing everything. And now they have nothing because it's all socialism. But Venezuela is oil rich. They're also gold rich, and they're uranium rich. Okay, so resources in Venezuela are copious. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there and how that all works out, okay? Next, I want to go into 5G because I keep getting tons of questions on 5G, and I don't want to spoil the party for everybody. Now, I'm going to say a disclaimer before I dive into this. And this disclaimer goes on every single time I talk about 5G. I am not for 5G. I believe 5G can be very damaging, and long-term its effects have not been researched yet, and we don't know how bad it can be. And ultimately, at the end of the day, millimeter waves are not good for us, and we shouldn't have them around, or we should find a way to handle them or make it a different frequency, whatever, right? So I don't dive into all the physics of it. I'm still researching it. However, I do not believe, and again, I could be wrong, but based on the research I'm doing, I do not believe that 5G caused this initial problem. I really, really don't. And the reason why, not because I don't want it to be an issue, but what I want to be is, I want to make sure we're deadly right on this from a standpoint of what caused this. Was it 5G, or was it a manufactured virus, or was it a combination, pollution, etc.? But 5G, I don't believe. The reason why I don't believe it, one, for a couple reasons actually. I've been looking at the maps across the country and across the world where 5G is, right? 5G has already been turned on in places all across the world and the country, and we have not had this same problem, okay? They didn't just trigger it on over there and it all of a sudden set off everything, right? So in New York, there is 5G, okay? But it's been since September of last year, all right? And it's mostly the entire city and the outskirts of the city. So I know New York City is having coronavirus problems, but it's not in the areas where 5G is, okay? There's actually cities, now, okay, Orlando, for example. Downtown Orlando has 5G. People are not dropping dead in Orlando, okay? So, yes, it's not good, but I do not believe that it is the cause or the sole cause of why this occurred, because 5G is in a lot of different places. It's already been turned on. It's been turned on in stadiums. Yes, it's been turned on in cruise ships, but more than one. So yes, everyone says the cruise ship had 5G. There's more than one cruise ship that had 5G. Not everyone went down for those, okay? Now, on top of that, Ben Greenfield, some may know that name, some may not know that name. Ben Greenfield is a health advocate, well-known public face in the health world, online, Twitter, etc. He and I agree in the fact that we're not saying it didn't cause it. We're just saying is we don't fully believe it's the only cause or that it's the trigger of what actually happened. There's actually a study that he posted on Twitter that shows a first study of 5G, and the studies coming back so far do not show those effects yet. Now, long term it could be, and I'm not trying to upset people over not jumping on the 5G bandwagon here, but I want to be very cautious. Now, could 5G and the combination of vaccines and the combination of other stuff cause a problem? Absolutely could. Okay, totally could. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying is so many people jumped on this wagon that's why everyone got sick in Wuhan. That's why people started dropping dead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It can't necessarily be the case, because if we're talking about science and we deduce out the different things that are in play, there's 5G in other places too. Right? There's 5G in other cities that are also very toxic environments, and people did not just start dropping dead in those same cities. So Wuhan has something very specifically different. On top of that, they have the lab where the damn virus was created. So that's a whole other story, okay? So I wanted to bring that up because I'm not defending 5G. I'm just saying is I don't think it's the only thing. And as I read deeper into it, and I'm actually going to the cell phone company sites. I also have, there's websites out there that will show you where the coverage is of all the way from 1 all the way up to 5G. If you look at those coverages, there's areas all over the U.S. and in the world that have 5G already there, and they're not causing the issues yet. And yes, they're raising the frequencies in certain areas. So your best bet right now is, one, don't get anything injected into you that you don't want, and two, have protection, okay? And then obviously write your local leaders and let them know this is a problem, this is an issue, okay? Just want to let you know about that. We are now importing hydroxychloroquine into the U.S. from India. So if you didn't know, I think it was last year, the president went over, India embraced him completely, and we are now importing in from there. So this is the kicker, is they're trying to get a $20 per patient fix, which can help bring people from the dead, it seems like. Now, why is it working? What's actually happening is it allows zinc to be driven into the cell. That's why. So I don't necessarily even think the hydroxychloroquine is the one that's actually doing it. I think the combination of zinc being driven in the cell, I think the zinc actually fixed it. And I've told you this in the past many different times, is the fact that there are countless herbs, nutritional support, etc., that will actually handle this thing, and that's from the literature. That's not from opinion. So I think it just drives it into the cell, and people are recovering from that. Now, I still don't believe the number fully. I still don't believe that, okay, so we're at 10,000 as of today, 10,000 people that have died in the U.S. from COVID-19. The problem is comorbidities, meaning anybody that comes in right now into a hospital, and the hospital, find me a hospital that's busy, that's the other thing. They're not all busy. So anybody who walks into a hospital right now and dies, they're basically labeling with COVID-19 unless it's specifically like a heart attack or something like that, right? So how many of those 10,000 are actually from a virus, or how many are from diabetes, cancer, other respiratory issues, etc.? So the number's not making sense. I think people are starting to wake up. Again, it's the majority of the population is not waking up. They're in the fear band, while as many of us and many out there, hopefully a couple million at least, are waking up to the fact that there's something wrong with this. And then you have Bill Gates being carted around all over the place. And he is basically parroting the New World Order line, the fact that he doesn't want anything coming back. He doesn't want anybody coming out until this is over, and then they want certificates, etc. I honestly think that ship has sailed. I think there are too many people that are awake like us out there, or even if you're not fully awake like us, you're getting this information, you're diving deep every night, and you're researching, and you're gaining knowledge. I think there's too many patriots and Americana out there that, quite honestly, when somebody comes out and says, you need to take this and be injected, I think there's too many patriots and citizens out there who are going to say, that doesn't make sense. Why would you immediately come out with this when the president is saying that we have a cheap generic medication that's an anti-malaria drug that will take care of it alone, and India is now even shipping stuff in to help us out. I just think that it doesn't line up, and I think people are waking up to the fact that the guy who created a piece of crap software that doesn't even work very well gets viruses like crazy because it allows them in, now wants to give you the thing that will handle a virus. It's actually kind of comical and ironic. I haven't used a PC other than in the office because that's what we use for our software. I haven't used a PC as a personal laptop or computer for at least 10 years, I would say, something like that. I still have my MacBook, actually right here. I still have this, my MacBook, which I've had for, I think, 10 years now plus. It still literally works almost like the day I bought it. I'm not saying Apple's perfect. I'm not saying they're the greatest company in the world. They have their own ethical problems as well. But it doesn't have problem. I had one time where I had to have the screen replaced. Other than that, this thing is like clockwork, and I love it. So, a whole computer thing. So the irony of Bill Gates having a software that is constantly bombarded by viruses, who wants to fix your virus, who is a college dropout, and I'm not saying like all doctors are smart and all doctors should be trusted, and I'm not even saying that Bill Gates couldn't go learn about viruses to understand everything and understand how they work. He's a very smart individual, obviously. However, I'm not taking his advice on how a virus works over myself, who studies this stuff on a daily basis and helps people all the time with their body handle this exact same stuff. So it's just not going to happen. And on top of that, we have peer-reviewed journals out there showing how herbs and nutrients actually handle this on its own. I don't need him telling us exactly what to do because I just don't trust him. That simple, okay? Good. Now, moving on, some interesting information that I follow. So I don't know if you know a name, Benjamin Fulford. He follows international geopolitics. I'm going to run down some of the stuff he talked about today in his blog, which was fantastic. Now, some of this stuff he's not always perfect on, but he's always pretty darn accurate. I would say no less than 70% of the time, sometimes 90+% of the time. And he's been following this whole thing for the longest time. He's been around since as long as I've been studying it. So his first thing is Angela Merkel, who is, I believe, the German Prime Minister in the EU. There is a lot of speculation. I've read this about 10 different times when studying it, that she's actually Adolf Hitler's daughter, and that she has tested for coronavirus. We haven't heard from her since, but she's a problem and being taken care of. Now, on top of that, I'm going to rattle through some of these things tonight, but the cabal is having, this is his report. The cabal is having underground bases destroyed in Utah, New York City, Idaho, California, and other places. Now, that could be, and most likely, is why the earthquakes are occurring. And a lot of people have said, well, that's just naturally occurring. Idaho doesn't have random 15 earthquakes in one night. It just doesn't happen. And if you actually look at where the earthquakes are, you can actually go look up where the earthquakes are. And they're actually in areas around where the tunnels out in the southwest and the DUMBs, okay, deep underground military bases, where they are as well. So it fits a pattern. And I don't think we just randomly have 5 and 6.0 plus earthquakes around the southwest for no particular reason right now. I think there's actually something going on. It doesn't make sense, okay? About the virus again. So diving into this as we start concluding a little bit tonight. The virus. Okay, so it started in Wuhan. There's an article on Zero Hedge. If you don't know what Zero Hedge is, go to zerohedge.com. It's a really good website for a lot of mainstream news, but also alternative news. And it's very, very analytical. So I'm going to read this to you. The outbreak was in near, I'm going to see if I can pronounce this correctly, Wuxi or Wuxi, WUXI, Pharma Corporation in Wuhan. Now, somebody went looking up and investigating. If you go to the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC website, and the link is on there, you can look up the Wuxi or Wuxi WXI Pharmaceutical Cayman Incorporated, and if you look it up, it's under George Soros' name. So I don't know if anybody knows about that, they heard it, if they've seen it, but that would tie this to George Soros. Someone who's very tied to George Soros was Bill Gates Sr., Dr. Fauci, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, etc. And if you saw, there's a picture I posted that had several of those people involved. And so it's very interesting that my theory is, based on what I've been reading, is that this was possibly the cabal's final shot at this. I have a friend of mine who's been messaging me that I'm trying to dive deeper in the astrology of all this stuff, and I'm going to talk to her later this week because I used to try to follow the astrology. I don't like to get into the woo-woo astrology because I think some of it can just be for entertainment, and I want to know the actual real stuff. And I learned that a long time ago, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Einstein, all the greats, even Tesla, were very, very in tune in studying astrology, because astrology connects us to our universe. And that's, the free energy aspect comes from the pyramids. A lot of people don't know what the pyramids are for. The pyramids are actually energy sources, and they align with the star systems. Now, the tunnels in the southwest also align with certain star systems. So, astrology is very, very deeply involved with this, and the elites know this. The elites play and understand astrology. So, as people say, well, this is biblical, and it very well could be biblical, biblical aligns with astrology, because if you didn't know, if you follow and read the Bible, they were led by the stars. That's simple. So I think there's a lot more to it. Plus, if you've ever seen the show Ancient Aliens, I don't love it because it's very dramatic, and I'd rather just have factual data given to me versus a whole dramatic story over a half hour, an hour. If you go back and look into the old caves, if you go to look at old artifacts thousands and millions of years ago, they had things like stars, the sun. They had little spaceship-looking things that are engraved into stone. This is all a timeline of our history. I posted tonight regarding someone on Twitter said, if you could learn one thing, what would it be? Would it be ETs, Antarctica, Vatican Vault, and something else? But the Vatican Vault has a lot of this stuff. You have been lied to about your history, essentially. It is not everything you think it is. If you think just going and reading and studying certain books and not reading all books, that you're getting the full picture, you're not. We have a very, very deep history. If you go look at Jim Marrs' Rule by Secrecy, he'll go through some of that stuff, which is really, really fascinating. But I do tell people, go read everything. So, for example, I have books up here that are written by people who are not necessarily good people. Not because I want their book and I want to follow them, but you sometimes have to read things written by those people to understand what might have been going on, what was going on, because our history has been occluded from us. And so a lot of this stuff will come back up. But that's why I wanted to talk about the Soros stuff, because they're all playing this very old game, which is to control a population, okay? Very, very important that you know that. Very, very important that you learn about this stuff and understand this stuff. Now, going fast forward, what I think could happen, and based on what I read today. Now, some of this is new, and I still have to go study some of it and give more of my theory on this, what's happening. But the Surgeon General the last couple of days said that we are going to have our Pearl Harbor. Now, what does he mean by that? Potentially a very big event that is not necessarily a good thing in the U.S. The Q world has also said that it's going to require a scare event that will be covered by the media. And then the president keeps saying that we could be having a dark, painful next week or two. What does that mean? I don't know. I want you to be prepared for possibly a false flag. If you don't know what a false flag is, go look that up. It just means something set off by the cabal to set off fear, etc., 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 and get people in a certain state of mind. This goes back to not necessarily believing everyone out there that's telling about controlled opposition, PSYOP, etc. You have to have your eyes open at all time. So even though I'm supporting our president, I'm following the Q information, I'm also keeping an eye on what's happening. And when it goes down, if it goes down, I'm hoping it doesn't go down. I'm hoping this is just finished off and handled. But you need to keep an eye on what's actually going on. But there could be potentially a scare event or a false flag type situation. False flag is like 9/11. So it's where everyone went to pandemonium. The country was reeling from it. At the time, they put things like the Patriot Act in, which took away a lot of our privacy. Hopefully that's not what this is for. Hopefully this is all handled and done the right way. So according to Benjamin Fulford, who I was reading today, he is on the side that President Trump is in full control of this, handling the whole thing, and this is the alliance or the good guys defeating the cabal. And I have at least a handful of not just QAnons and Q. I have a handful of sources that I follow that they're all saying the exact same thing, okay? And when people say, well, it's just a conspiracy theory and it's a PSYOP, can I tell you that there's only probably honestly about 500,000 maybe people who follow this stuff. This is not widespread mainstream media, etc. There was even an article the other day saying that 25% of the people, of the population, know about the QAnon movement. I would argue those numbers. I think it's more like 0.0005%. I really don't think there's that many. And why would you need a PSYOP to confuse and polarize 0.0005% of the population? You wouldn't. If you want something that will get people caught up in something while you do something else, that's putting something out that 75% of the population thinks. So right now, most of the population thinks that there's a virus, right? And there's only so many of us who are like, wait, there's something else to this. There's something going on. So keep that in mind. Now, the other thing he talks about is a global collapse of the economic system, where he may be putting 5 trillion more into the economy over the next month or two, which will not help. It will actually create more collapse, and then possibly, most likely, a global and American economic reset. Now, why I say that, you could think NESARA, you can think GESARA, I don't know. They didn't say that. But the global reset would be one thing, because we have to operate globally, but also a republic reset, okay? Where you'd reset the monetary system. And at this point, I don't know how you don't do that, because we're not going to pay back. So the debt was around 22 trillion monetary, and then we added 2 to 6 million on this first stimulus bill, depending on how much we want to spend. So there's your 24, upwards of 26, 27 trillion. And then if you add another 5 trillion, which is what Ben is saying, you're over 30 trillion, maybe $35 trillion debt at that point. You're not paying back a $35 trillion debt because there's just not enough money, and the interest wouldn't cover it. So again, that goes back to bankrupting possibly the Federal Reserve and having the Treasury buy it for pennies on the dollar, which we've discussed, we've asked about that, and that could be a possibility. Now, there's also a possibility he talks about with introducing the Tesla free energy technology. I'm going to dive deeper into that. I don't know all about it, so I have to research it, but it's very possible. Now, it's also possible that he is turning off 5G. That is from Ben Fulford, that he is turning off 5G before this goes down. Again, that's a source. That's not me saying that. I don't know for sure. This is just what I'm reading. But if you turn that off and then flipped over to Tesla free technology, I think, and I've always believed this for the longest time, that we could use a different frequency to run all of our cell phones, all of our computers, all of our technology that's a more healing frequency. I truly, truly believe we can do that. I don't believe that we can't have technology and it has to be harmful. I just don't believe. I believe that there's too much possibility in this world where we could actually have good quality frequencies. And then you could potentially have blockchain and all the cryptos and everything else, maybe backed by metals, etc., all that good stuff. That's my utopian world, is where we actually have a good system. We can use the amazing technology we have, and we can do it without harming the population. I think that would be genius. Now, it's saying that this would be done, or could be at least put into place, by around July 2020, which is not years. That's literally a couple to a few months away. And if you've heard President talk about before, he has said many times over and over that once we get through this, he expects the market and the economy to skyrocket and be red hot by the summer into the late into the year. Now, our economy is technically struggling right now for the last month or so. We're not going to jump back up and just be perfect in a couple months. Obviously, the market could be hot, but it's going to take years, unless they reset, to potentially bring this whole thing back to where it should be, because we're at almost 30,000 in the stock market. Not that that's the perfect symbol for what the economy is, because that's the casino. But we could build an economy that's actually good for the people. We can clean up our planet, etc. And that all could be done with real technology that's done in a good form. The last thing I want to go over is Ben talked about, this could be very fascinating. I don't know how to dive into this without just coming out with it. That Trump and Putin have been talking about this behind the scenes, and that the Ukraine corruption is destroyed, along with Biden, Kerry, Pelosi, Romney, etc., and many more, and that Russia would actually take over as a territory the Ukraine. In exchange, we would destroy the socialism in Venezuela and take over Venezuela as a territory. Now, I do not know how all that works, because obviously Venezuela is part of South America. But I think it's an interesting theory, and Trump has said he's going to go grab the oil. Now, I don't think he meant that as a negative. I think he meant that they wanted to control it from the cabal, because honestly, Venezuela is controlled by the cabal. It's socialism. They wanted to bring that to America, and he said, we will not, as long as I'm president, be a socialist country. That's actually even in the book. I mean, Junior goes over it a million times. We are not going to be a socialist country. So that's what I believe. That's where I think we're going with it, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how much of that is true, what that's not true. Again, none of this is to take you down the wrong pathway. This is to educate you, to keep you positive and believe that something good is going to come out of this. But at the same time, always have your defenses up. Make sure you know what's going on at all time. If something turns on us, we have to be ready to defend ourselves and tell them, no, we will not lose our constitutional rights. We will not be taken down that road. We need to be very vigilant and stay in present time and watching at all times so that we're not hoodwinked by anything. Good. Let me see if there's any questions. I'm super ready to go to our tour a la Margarita in Venezuela. Let me tell you, I would love to go to Venezuela, but I'm not going until it's fixed. Okay. Aren't there Hitler bunkers there? I'm going to take questions, so if you have anything, shoot it up here, and I'll answer the best of my ability for a little bit, and then we'll be done for the night. What are your thoughts about the darkness potentially happening tomorrow, the 10th? Is this happening? I do not know. The darkness could also be the kids. No one actually knows technically. Did they find the crooked president of Venezuela? Not that I've heard. I'm sure you'll know about it in the media when they do. Let's see. Yes, or I hope I'm right about Venezuela too. Venezuela needs to be freed of their tyranny. Let's see. Okay, good. If you Hillary Clinton is guilty, she's guilty of sin. Yes, that's. I think everyone believes that. Do you think that COVID may be the false flag? Yeah, it could be. I think they might go deeper than that though. They installed 5G right near my kids' school. Are those necklaces enough to protect them? Yeah, for the time being, that's all you can do technically. Yes, I understand it's very possible where it is happening where they're installing 5G into schools. I have not personally seen one yet, so I can't necessarily speculate on that other than the fact I will tell you, yes, again, I'm worried about 5G, especially around kids. Your kids, by the way, you should already be working to protect your kids. Your kids are in a Wi-Fi cloud on a daily basis in schools, way before 5G ever got there. So you need to feed your kids quality fats to keep their brain protected. You need to protect them with all the 5G information that we've given you. You need to get the necklaces on them, get all the safe space stuff, etc., all that different stuff. I'll drop the link at the end of the show where you can get all that. But you need to protect your kids. Their brains, get them off the meds with medical help, okay? Get them off the meds, get them off the junk, get them off the sugar, get them off everything else, get their brain functioning again, and they will be better off for that. Okay, good. Yes, read that. What is meant by darkness or darnkess? Yes, darkness was misspelled. It's darnkess. That leads to a book on child trafficking. I'm hoping we're getting kids out of the underground bunkers. What do you think of POTUS mentioning the traffic tonight? Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. I think that is fascinating. He's being very, very transparent about what they're doing. I read somewhere Obama has coronavirus. I read it too. I think it's a fake story. There is speculation for a long time that in the next week or so that it could be Obama or Podesta that could be arrested. I don't know how accurate that is. Again, a lot of people are saying, well, why hasn't anything happened yet or not? Remember, Q drops the links. The Anons are trying to decode it. There is no specific or complete timeline, okay? It's been fairly accurate so far, but there is no specific date something is going to happen. That is what they're trying to put the puzzle together, okay? Everyone likes the shirt. I say question everything to an extent because, again, I also believe at some point you have to have faith in people. For example, I can question the president all day, but at the end of the day, I also have to follow him. He's a good leader. He's making sense. He's talking smart. You have to get behind the person. So there's a lot of people in my life and a lot of things in my life that I don't question. It's because I've already done my due diligence and I've gotten to the point of trust. But other than that, yes, you should question everything and you should be a critical thinker. That's what I mean by the shirt. Thoughts on RFK Jr.'s niece? Hard to say. Accident, sinister, I don't know. They play a weird game at this high level. Oh, I want to mention that too. So send some questions in. That's fine. I'll get to them as best as I can. I'm going to finish with this tonight because I actually wanted to talk about this and I didn't get a chance to or I forgot to. So this is what I was thinking about. And there's actually, I'm gonna plug this book even though I make nothing on it. I'm gonna plug it because it's a good book. This book made me start thinking about something yesterday. In the past, you heard one of the campaign slogans was, President Trump did not have to take this job on. And it sounds good and it sounds nice and everything else. But I want to go deeper on that. So, President, I think he's worth somewhere around $3 or $4 billion, something like that. A lot of people have slammed him for where's his taxes, everything else. The guy's a billionaire. That's simple. And you know what? There's very few billionaires on the planet, so he's obviously accomplished something. The rumor is that the military came to him. The military decided they were tired of being used as pawns for a globalist cabal to go over and destroy other countries, etc. And they wanted to be national defense, which is what they were built for. So they potentially got with President Trump, asked him to run for office, gave him the plan of what they wanted to do to take down the cabal, and that's why he's there. So, this is the thing. The president has built an amazing brand. You see Trump all over the place. You know, I've stayed in one Trump hotel, I believe. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful. I've been in the Trump hotel in New York, it's beautiful. So he's built this amazing brand. He's in his 70s, I think, right now, if I'm correct. He has an amazing family. They all are very ethical. They don't do drugs. They don't drink a ton of alcohol. They're not alcoholics. They're all very clean. They're all very smart. They have degrees. They work very high end in the businesses that they are. They seem like a put together family, right? And they don't get in trouble. You don't see them in the news all the time. So the president, this is my theory on this, is going down deeper this hole, is the president realized before he was president that his companies are handled. His kids are running the show. They're good. He's 70-some years old. He's accomplished everything in construction, in building, in branding, in marketing, etc. So, what happens in life is you get really good at something, you get to the top, you have everyone below delegated to handle all the things on the daily basis, and then what happens is you get bored. Now, do I think the president was completely bored with what he was doing? Not necessarily. But what if the military came to you, you had billions of dollars in the bank, everything is being run correctly, your kids have taken over, you're doing fine, everything's wonderful, and then they say, hey, we need your help. You've accomplished everything where you are. We have a bigger game for you to play. And the president might have said, okay, I'm listening. What is it? And they say what it is. And they say, if you help us with this, not only will we be one of the biggest construction and name brands in the planet, but you would go down, potentially, as the greatest president in history of the Republic. Because if we can help you take down the cabal and free us back to a republic and let the whole population and the planet know what was going on underneath their noses, you would go down as potentially the greatest of all time and the greatest since our founders. Now, President Trump, being, I'm sure, humble, has a big ego. You know, you don't get to that level, I've said in the past, without having some sort of ego. If that is given to you, and then the military says, don't worry, we have your back completely, nothing will happen to you. You just carry out what we need you to carry out. And the military is of the type of mindset where they don't want all the credit. Even though they'll get a lot of credit from us, they're not looking for credit. They're tired of being pawns in a rich banker's game. The president says, let me think about this a second. So I get to win. I've already won in life. Now I get to win as president and get to go down potentially as the greatest in history while also saving our country. That could be one of the greatest plans ever devised. And the fact that when he's done, he can walk away and say, I build the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands in the world. My family's completely taken care of and they operate the brand for me. And now I just took over the country, destroyed an evil, dark enemy, and Not only does everyone love me at this point, but I helped save our destiny. That's pretty damn good, because at the end of the day, he didn't need this. He could have stayed in his billion-dollar empire, continued to do what he did. But I will tell you, very successful people do not like to be stale. When they've accomplished something and they beat a game, they go on to a bigger game. They go on to a bigger goal. That's just how their mind works. It happens to many, many people. And you don't have to be a billionaire for this to happen. There's things in my life that I've taken. I've won at something, and I want to go to the next thing. I had a 4-year degree. I was good. I was working in the sports industry, having a lot of fun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I met my wife, and she was already a doctor. And then so I decided to leave what I was doing to go help her with practice because I loved her and I wanted to take care of her and help her with the business, but I was behind the scenes. And then I started seeing all the victories. I started seeing all patients get better. I saw like amazing, miraculous healing using natural healthcare and chiropractic. And then I'm looking at it going, wow, that looks kind of fun. And then my wife planted a little seed and said, why don't you do what I do? And I said, I don't want 4 more years of college. 13 years of college seems like a lot. But then that seed slowly dug deeper inside. And then I said one day, you know what? Let's do it. Trust me, I did not want to go through 4 more years of college at the doctorate level because I didn't love school. But the idea of playing a bigger game, getting a doctor, and at the end of the day, hey, guess what? I have an ego just like everybody else does. Now, I keep my ego in check and I stay humble and I use it to help people, but I, like everyone else out there, likes to be admired, and I like to take care of things, and I like to be a winner, right? And so I was like, let's play the game. So I went, I accomplished my 4-year degree, my doctorate degree, became a doctor. Now I get to do all that stuff. Now I'm at this level. But I will tell you, I'm not bored, by the way, but there are certain things that I want to do that are at a higher level. I want to accomplish more things. That's a bigger game, okay? So my whole point in this is, I could see the president or pre-president, I could see Donald Trump saying, bigger game, I go down, the Trump name would be encased in gold for the rest of history and potentially the greatest president of all time if he destroyed the cabal. I think he would have made a very good decision and said, let's go for it. Just my opinion. But I think it makes sense. And when I think about that, I'm like, wow, that is pretty genius plan. The military loves him. He loves the military. He loves the country. He talks about it all the time. Like last week, he said, I'm proud to be your president. Someone doesn't say that unless they actually have, like when he says it with intent. And so I think that's very, very important to watch and very, very important to see. And I believe that that's very possibly why this is all going down. And again, I choose to believe in this, and I choose to believe in this route and this path in this divine way because it's better than being on the negative side of it. If you know somebody or you are somebody who's sitting at home thinking about the negative stuff all day long and how they're going to come chip us and vaccinate us and destroy us and cull the population, it's good to have that and know that that could happen. But if you're sitting in that all day, you are defeating yourself and you're putting out poor vibes to the rest of humanity. And you can't stay there. It's just not a good place. So let's choose to be on target. Let's choose to go this path. Let's put all those positive energies out there. And instead of being down here, let's rise up here and let's create this world we want to, and let's get behind the president, make this happen. Let's make him make this happen, and let's get behind our military. I listen to I listen to General Milley like almost every single day. I will tell you, when I hear the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff for a minute and a half get in front of a podium and talk directly to the camera and the journalists, when he says, this is the United States military, we will not allow you to come in and drug our people, we will not allow you to take our country down, that makes my heart feel very, very warm because I trust and believe in our United States military. I have family who are military, and I believe the military is out to defend our Constitution, our people. And so that's why I get behind this, and it just makes me feel good in general. Okay? Guys, I'll check through these. Keep writing stuff. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for following, listening, and being with us and on this journey. Have a wonderful Monday evening. This is Dr. Jason Dean, Revolution Network, signing off. Be well. Take care of yourself. Go help somebody. Go serve someone. You make them and yourself feel amazing. Have a good night.